We are currently live on Facebook. So if you're watching me right here on TikTok, I'm looking at the camera right in front of me. So we're live on TikTok and Facebook. We're going to talk today about remote job opportunities in 2024, how to secure remote jobs. So make sure to leave a like, share, and let's get started. Everybody, welcome. So let's get started. So we're going to be talking about how to get remote jobs in 2024, and this is brought to you by the Programmers University. Okay, firstly, it's brought to you by the Programmers University. As you can see, this is going to be the little agenda we're going to have today. So we're going to have an introduction, then we'll talk about the remote job landscape in 2024 overall, how to identify remote job opportunities, how to build a remote ready skill set, how to ace remote job interviews, how to craft your remote job application, how to set up your workspace for success, navigating the remote work culture, and finally Q&A sessions and how to get started with all this. So, first of all, we're going to start by understanding the remote job market. First of all, what is remote work? Remote work, also known as telecommuting, is a flexible working arrangement that allows employees to work outside of a traditional office environment based on the concept that work doesn't need to be done in a specific place to be executed successfully. So the concept of remote work has been there for a long time, but it became really prevalent only after COVID-19 when the whole world was confined and all that kind of stuff. So if you look at the current trends from 2014 to 2023, you see that the tendency of people employing remote workers has increased exponentially. And if you're in Africa right now, what does this mean for you? This means that a lot of employers right now hire remotely, so they are not scared to hire people offshore, that is people from other countries, other continents. So now it's a very good time to learn a skill that you can apply remotely, or that you can work for someone remotely, or do any kind of remote related work, because right now the rate of employment for remote jobs have increased exponentially compared to 10 years ago. So other names used to describe remote work include telecommuting, virtual job, and of course home-based jobs. Chris says he hopes he can get the recorded version. Yep, you'll be able to get a recorded version after this. So now let's talk about the benefits of remote work. First of all, we have location independence. The primary feature of remote work is the ability to perform job duties from any location, eliminating the need for physical presence in a traditional office setting. So for everybody who loves their home, who loves to do work on their desk in the comfort of their home, remote work is perfect for you. And this is actually the main feature of remote work. The second benefit is reduced times to commute. So if it's that you are working, let's say, in a place which was 1 hour away from your home or 30 minutes away from your home, the only distance between you and your job when you're working remotely is just your ability to turn on your computer and start speaking to your manager or start doing your work. So commuting to work is nearly inexistent, unless you're maybe going to a cafe to work, or you're going to a public place like a library. Another very important benefit is the access to a wider talent pool. This one is mainly for employers. As I said earlier, employers are able to hire from anywhere in the world, so they are not really restricted to people around their location. They can get high quality talent whether you're in their same state, or whether they're looking in another country or another state. So this is a very great advantage of remote work. And in the IT space, this is done a lot because talent is not really centralized. Like, the best talent is not in the US, the best talent is not in France, it's not in India. The best talent is spread all across the world. So employers can benefit from this by hiring people from everywhere. Now, improve work-life balance. This one is not for everyone, but some people have a very good work-life balance when working remotely, because you're not going from 9 to 6 p.m. at a physical location doing work the whole day. When you're at home, after you're done with your task, you can even take a little break, turn on Netflix without your boss knowing, even though I won't advise you to do that. But you can turn on Netflix when you're done with your task, and do whatever, then come back to work. So you're not as stressed as if you are working in a physical location, and you can even be more efficient. So the environmental benefits, with fewer people commuting and less need for large office spaces, remote work can contribute to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and lower the overall environmental footprint. So of course, with less people driving cars and less people working outside, there'll be less pollution, and overall the atmosphere will be a little bit better to go out and breathe, because everybody or most people are working remotely from home or from an office space or whatever they choose. So now that we are done with the benefits, let's look at the trend towards shifting towards remote work in the world. So an unprecedented shift towards remote work has been accelerated by recent global events, fundamentally changing how companies operate and where employees perform their duties. Organizations worldwide are recognizing the benefits of remote work, including increased productivity, lower operational costs, and access to a broader talent pool. So as you can see, this doesn't only benefit the employee, but also benefits the employer, because one of the main things that employers want to do is to reduce costs. And if they can reduce costs by not having a location, because sometimes paying those buildings, paying rent for those buildings are quite expensive for employers. So they tend to want to hire remotely so they can save costs. And as I said earlier, they can access a higher talent pool, because there are a lot of people living in a lot of African countries, living in Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon, wherever. There are a lot of very talented people who are very good at what they do. But if it weren't for remote work, let's say they won't really have access to certain opportunity. And employers know that they can hire remotely and access those talents worldwide. So they usually opt for employing people remotely. And you see that countries that benefit a lot from remote opportunities are Asian countries like India, Pakistan. Even to my recent knowledge, Brazil is also a country where they hire a lot of remote workers. So one of my objectives too is that in the coming years, Africa should be the next go-to place. So keep that in mind, and moving forward, we should try to work towards that. This is just a little trend to see how the advent of remote work has been increasing for the past how many years. This is since 2019. So we see that more than 1 in 10 job offerings offer remote work. So this trend has increased for over 11% since 2019, and this graph is only a 2022 graph. So from 2023 to 2024, this has probably increased, and it will keep on increasing as time goes on. Here we can see another chart here. Here are the top 10 industries for remote jobs. We see that IT is the number one. That is why when you get into IT, or when anybody wants to get into IT, I always tell the person that you have an endless amount of opportunity, because you're not only limited to the location in which you are or the country in which you are. IT is the highest industry where remote workers are being hired. As you can see in this chart, even project management is at the bottom, product management is at the bottom, human resource, something that can even be done remotely, is still at the bottom, and even customer service is at the bottom. IT is the number one. So whether you're a web developer, whether you're a software developer, mobile application developer, cloud engineer, cloud architect, as we'll see in the next slide, those are very high in demand positions for remote work. Now let's look at how to prepare for remote work, the skills and tools you need to look for. First of all, these are the skills and these are the attitude you need to adopt when working remotely. Firstly, self-discipline and motivation. This sounds very generic, but it's actually really, really, really important, because when you're working remotely, sometimes since you're at home, you might decide to be lazy, sleep, not do the work or procrastinate and not do the work you have been assigned to, and later on realize that your performance is really poor. So the ability to stay focused and motivated without direct supervision is crucial for productivity, because there'll be a lot of times where you're going to be given a task to do, but you're not being supervised since you're at home. You have to be able to stay disciplined and self-motivated in order to carry out that task to the very end. Secondly, we have time management. Of course, effective time management skills are necessary to meet deadlines and balance multiple tasks efficiently. I currently work with a team. All of my team members are remote, and sometimes I know it's not easy to manage the time efficiently, but I think most of my team members, they do a pretty good job at meeting deadlines, and this is something that is very crucial when working remote. And being able to secure your remote position for a long time is being able to manage deadlines no matter what obstacle you have, no matter if there is a cuttage in electricity. You should be able to manage your time efficiently. I'm seeing there's a lot of comments. Obviously, we're going to get straight to the comments after the presentation, so keep your questions for the end. We are going to get right into it. Then the next thing is digital literacy. You need to be familiar with all these tools, like tools like Jira, how they call it, Asana, Google Meet, Zoom, all those kind of things. You have to be familiar with all those tools, because these are the tools that you are going to be relying on, you and your team, in order to work and collaborate efficiently in a remote setting. So you must be familiar with these tools. If you aren't, you need to learn, because there is no excuse. You won't tell your employer or your boss that you don't know how to use this tool, so you're not going to use it. You're just going to get fired if you say that kind of thing. So you have to get familiar. You have to be willing to learn and adapt. And as I said, adapt. The last point is adaptability. The ability to adapt to new technologies, workflows, and communication styles is essential in a dynamic remote work environment. If you've ever worked remotely, you see that there's suddenly a lot of tools you need to use. There are a lot of tools to use to manage the project, to communicate. If you're used to working only with WhatsApp or used to working with something like Telegram, just keep that out of your mind. Start getting used to the remote work tools like Slack, Monday.com. There are several tools depending on the people you're working for or working with. There are several tools you need to know and adapt to at any time, and always be ready to change the tools and adapt to new tools. Now let's look at the tools for remote work. As we talked earlier, we have to be able to adapt to several new tools. So the tools you have to look at when working remotely, you have things like Slack, Microsoft Teams, or Zoom. Zoom is mainly for communications and meetings. I think Slack and Microsoft Teams are very, very popular, but these are not the only tools. As I said earlier, there are several tools in the market. Depending on the employer, they might bring out a tool you've never seen before. You should be ready to adapt and be ready to learn. So project management tools, we have Trello, Asana, Jira, Jira to track tasks and projects. I use Trello a lot. I've also used Monday, but you see things like Jira, which is very popular in the remote setting. Even Asana is very popular. And for cloud storage, this is to share files, share videos, and documents, all those kind of stuff. You have Google Drive, Dropbox, or OneDrive. Time management apps, you have Todoist, Toggle, security softwares, VPNs, and antivirus. So keep this in mind. When working remotely, you'll be exposed to several different tools and several new ways of doing the same thing you've been used to doing. So you always have to keep this in mind when shifting to a remote setting, because this is inevitable. Nextly, the most important tool for remote work, this is the most important tool, is your workspace or your desk or the place where you used to work. This is the most important place because this is where you're going to do all your work. So it's important to keep it clean, keep it balanced, make it comfortable, because you'll be spending most of your time doing all your work, and your work is literally what is funding your lifestyle or giving you money. So your workspace is the most important tool. I call it a tool because it's like a place where you get productive and where you do the things you have to do to make money. So your workspace is actually the most important tool for remote work. The other ones can come later. Now let's talk about finding remote jobs in tech. So let's look at the tech jobs that are the most common for remote work. First of all, we have web developer, we have cloud architect, software developer, UI UX designer, database administrator, and cybersecurity engineer. These are obviously not all the jobs available for remote work, but from my research and from my experience, these are the most popular. So if you're a part of the Programmers University right now and you're currently enrolled in the front-end development program, know that what we are doing is front-end development, and this is basically web development. And web development is a very, very highly demanded skill in the remote setting. So you not only have access to local jobs or local opportunities, you can always search for online opportunities, remote jobs, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really, really diverse. There is really a huge amount of opportunities. So you have to keep that in mind. Next, we have to look at the best platforms for remote jobs. First, we have dedicated remote jobs platforms like We Work Remotely, Remote.co, FlexJobs, Arc, JobStart, and Remotive. Now we have other general search sites like LinkedIn. Everybody probably knows what LinkedIn is. We have Indeed, we have Glassdoor, we have Upwork. Upwork is something that I've used before. I know a lot of people who use it, who live in Cameroon, live in Nigeria, and earn hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, from Upwork. So Upwork is a platform I recommend a lot because I'm familiar with it. But obviously, Indeed is great. LinkedIn is great too. TopTal and freelance.com, they are not really freelance. They are freelance platforms, but you have to go through like an exam. You have to go through like a test so that they can determine if you're good. If you're suitable for the job or not. So it's not like something like Upwork or LinkedIn where you are the master of your own application. You are the one sending application and convincing recruiters. So you have to keep that in mind. If you can take a screenshot even or an image to make more research, it's going to be great because these are platforms where people all over the world access in order to make to grasp these remote opportunities. Now, if you're looking for remote jobs, what you have to understand is that it's not only enough to apply for jobs. You have to learn how to network. You have to learn how to build connections, because it's thanks to those connections that you get things like referrals. You get presented to, let's say, managers or CEOs of companies who are looking for remote hires. So you have to take note that networking is a very, very, very huge thing in the remote working space. The first platform that you have to take note of is obviously LinkedIn. Make sure to update your profile to indicate that you're seeking remote work and engage with relevant groups and discussion. Because I see a lot of times people go on LinkedIn, they only update their profile and they don't really post, they don't really engage, and they just update their profile and expect people or recruiters to come to them. When you go on this online platform, networking means interacting with people. You have to interact with people, potential recruiters, and overall just try to have an online presence so that they can know that you exist, and hopefully you get a referral. And when I say hopefully because it's not guaranteed. You can do all that work and it's still going to be difficult. So do all that, just do what you have to do, keeping in mind that it can be fruitful. But even though it takes some time, you have to keep on trying to network, keep on trying to build an online presence. So obviously attend virtual networking events like webinars, online conferences, and workshops in your industry to meet potential employers and learn about new opportunities. Also, a platform like Twitter, this one is not very discussed in the professional sense, but I think a platform like Twitter helps you build relationships. Like there are a lot of Twitter communities, Twitter spaces, and just tweeting to the right audience can help you be in the, how can I say, like in the sight or in the peripheral of a potential recruiter or someone looking to hire remotely, and ultimately you can land a job. So building an online presence, networking online, is a huge thing when you're focusing on remote work or you're trying to get a remote job. Even if you're trying to get an in-person job, networking is one of the fundamental things you must learn how to do. So now let's talk a little bit in depth about the importance of an online presence. First of all, let's look at the professional online presence. A well-maintained LinkedIn profile or personal website can showcase your skills and experiences to potential employers. So as I said earlier, LinkedIn is a great way to have a professional portfolio online. So you should always try to have your LinkedIn profile updated and always have the latest of your projects posted on LinkedIn, and try to just have a very professional looking picture, professional looking discussion, because LinkedIn is more professional. If you want to go to a more casual place to network and meet new people, you have platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, where it can be more casual, but it's still very, very effective to meet new people and network efficiently. Then, secondly, you have to showcase your portfolio. If you're a developer, you must have a GitHub profile. You should have projects that are hosted on your GitHub. You should have projects that are hosted on a website. Like if you've built, let's say, a little dashboard application or a social media application, it should be hosted on either a custom domain or a generic domain given by websites which offer free hosting. So it's very important to have your project hosted if you're a developer. And if you're a creative, like you're a UI UX designer or a graphic designer, have your projects posted on places like Behance, even GitHub. You can post on GitHub. You can also post on Dribble, because that is where you showcase your skills. The UI UX designer I work with right now, I saw her profile on Behance. That is where I saw her profile, and we exchanged before being able to work together. So Behance is very powerful if you're in the more if you're having the creative skills, like you're a UI UX designer or a graphic designer. Always make sure to showcase your work online, showcase your portfolio, because that is even more powerful than a resume. A resume doesn't have any weight if you don't have projects nowadays. It was in the early 2000s where just with a resume you could land a good job, but right now you must have projects, you must have a good profile, you must host your project somewhere so we can see what you're capable of. If you're watching right now, if you're still watching right now, make sure to share the live, and let's keep going. Let me know in the comment section too if so far you've learned something. Okay, let's keep going. So now, how do you find remote jobs? In order to find remote jobs, you have to know about the platforms. As we cover the platforms or the popular platforms for remote jobs earlier, you have Rework Remotely, remote.co, and general job search websites like LinkedIn and Indeed. So always keep in mind that these are your go-to places in order to find remote jobs. Without these platforms, it would be very, very, very difficult to find remote jobs. And if it's that you're part of the Programmers University right now, after the training, you're going to be subject to proposals to companies who are looking to hire, especially companies in Africa for now, and eventually in the future, when we are going to have companies abroad reaching out to us, we are going to link them to graduates of the Programmers University. So keep this in mind when you're entering the program. Know that you have to give it your best, because when someone is going to come to recruit graduates, we are first going to recommend the best students in the program. So keep this in mind as you're coming into the program. Make sure to give in your best when doing projects, because this is what we are going to use to showcase to potential employers. And a lot of these positions that we're going to offer are going to be remote. Obviously, they're also going to be local depending on where you live. And this slide is basically a summary of what we mentioned before. In order to find remote jobs, you have to know the suitable platforms. You have to know how to network, building a professional LinkedIn profile, being active on other social networks like Twitter, and attending virtual industry conferences. And finally, your online presence. Create a professional LinkedIn profile, build a personal website or portfolio to showcase your work, and engage with relevant communities and forums online. In the Programmers University, we have communities where you can engage with other students. Eventually, we are going to have communities where we are going to bring employers together so that you can even engage with employers who eventually post jobs and try to look for potential candidates for their positions. So engaging online is a must right now, because I see a lot of people who try to look for remote work or try to look for opportunity without engaging online, and they expect a lot. This is not more the early 2000s. This is 2024. Everything is online. If you don't have an online presence, you're missing out. You have to build an online presence, engage a lot with people online, because right now online is basically an extension to the reality in which we live. So keep that in mind. If you don't have an online presence, try to build one. No matter what industry you are, whether you're a developer, whether you're a designer, whether you're doing copywriting, it doesn't matter. An online presence is a must. So now, how do you apply for remote jobs? Let me give you some application tips. Tailor your resume and cover letter to highlight remote work skills and experience. So if you're having your so in your resume, after writing your skills, or after writing down all your skills, make sure to talk about your communication skills, your time management skills, because those are very important in a remote setting. Say that you're a good communicator, you're a very pragmatic person who can deliver work with no delay. You manage your time very well. Those are very important skills to have for remote work. And when you're crafting out your resume for your remote work, you need to mention your previous experiences and your relevant projects. And as I usually say, when mentioning your relevant projects, you have to put in the links. If you're a developer, put in all the links to all the projects you've worked before. If the position is a web developer position, put in all the links to all the websites you've had to build. If it's a backend position, put in the links to your GitHub or to the relevant GitHub project that is related to the job. So always make sure to put in necessary links in all your projects. This is really, really important when writing out your resume. Sometimes, even when when messaging a recruiter on LinkedIn, you don't need to talk too much about yourself. Just send your project. Like, just send the links to your project. Just like this is a message this is a template or a message template I was using when messaging recruiters on LinkedIn. I'll present myself, I'll present what I do, why I'm interested in the position. Then I just go straight to sending the links to my project, sending the links to my resume, the link to my GitHub, and everything I've hosted. This was getting me a reply 6 out of 10 times. So for every 10 recruiters I message, I'll get like 4 to 6 replies. I'll not always land an interview, but that is a pretty good number. That's not a very bad number. So now to prepare for virtual interviews, obviously you have to test your camera, your microphone, your internet connection beforehand. Prepare your answers for common remote work related interview questions. So do research. If you manage to land an interview, do research, try to find the most common questions. And know that at the end of the interview, you should ask questions to the recruiter. Dress professionally and choose a quiet and well-lit environment. Don't dress like me right now. I just have a t-shirt. But if you're trying to interview for a position, whether it's remote or in person, try to dress professionally. If you can wear a suit, you should. Or if you can have a nice t-shirt, wear your t-shirt. And yeah. So I think, okay, we still have one slide. So now let's look at some common remote work challenges and how to overcome them. We are going to look at the challenges and their solution. We have isolation and loneliness. This is very common for someone who doesn't really go out and who spends all his days or his or her days inside just working. So if you're having this problem, you can participate in online communities and discussion. Or if you have like a nice company with a nice community, just interact with your team members or your how they call it, if it's not team members, or your colleagues. Interact with your colleagues. Just try to engage in conversations and discussions, and you might solve your loneliness and your isolation problem. And obviously when you're done with your work, try going out, try going strolling. Another challenge when working remotely is distractions. In order to manage distractions, you should have a very nice and dedicated workspace free from distractions. So try to keep your mobile phone away. Try to keep the television far away from your workspace. And if you have kids or if you have family members disturbing, try to let them know you're working and to keep their voices down. Another challenge is communication and collaboration. In order to overcome this, you have to try to over communicate and clarify your expectations with the team, because in a remote setting, someone is not always going to be there to check how you're doing. So sometimes you have to be the one who is going towards your manager or going towards the person you're working with to tell the person what you're doing or any challenges you're facing. You have to over communicate and always be the first to make the first move. If not, if you're sitting down and waiting, well, nothing's gonna happen. Finally, the final challenge is staying productive and motivated. When you're working at home, you can either be very productive or lazy because you're in your comfort zone. So working at home is a hit or miss. Some people are very productive at home, others are just filled up with distractions and are very hardly motivated. So it's very important to set daily and weekly goals to provide direction and a sense of achievement. So that at the end of each day, when you meet your goals or when you meet the objectives you set to yourself, you feel good and you feel like you should keep going and moving in that direction. So now we are going to move on to questions and discussion. So if you had any question throughout the stream, or if you had anything you wanted to talk about, this is the time and this is the end of the slides.